On this week's episode of That Sound podcast, we have Clint Wells. Clint is a producer, a songwriter, and he is also a musician as well. Clint hails from Nashville, Tennessee, and he is currently touring with Morgan Wade. Clint runs a podcast of his own also called Metal Up Your Podcast. So if you enjoyed this episode, be sure to check it out. Strap yourselves in and enjoy. This week's episode is brought to you by our sponsor, Defy Sports. You can check them out at defysports.ie. Defy Sports are a sports apparel company based in County Louth. They have a couple of stores in Dundalk, County Louth, and they supply a multitude of sports apparel. This includes half-zips, t-shirts, training tops, retro GAA jerseys, retro rugby jerseys. They even supply school uniforms and a lot of other things too. You can check them out at defysports.ie, or you can contact them by email if you have a query about ordering something, orders@defy.ie. Big thanks to Defy for sponsoring this week's episode. Clint, what's been happening?
Not a lot. I'm in between tours, which for a normal person would mean chilling out and taking time. I'm a classic dude. I'm kind of dumb, but I like to make things, because if I just sit around, I feel useless. So I'm finishing a couple of records, producing records for people, writing in my studio every day, tinkering like an old man. So we just finished a 2.5-month tour with Alanis Morissette. We're about to do our own, I think it's a 4-week headlining club run that starts in 2.5 weeks. So I'm just sort of in my house, trying not to drive my family crazy, watching movies, being a dad.
Yeah. A big horror fan, if I'm right in saying.
Big horror movie fan, yeah. Been catching up on some horror movies. Do you guys like horror movies? You guys seen anything cool lately?
Not recently, but I do remember, I'll never forget the first time I seen the original Exorcist movie.
Oh yeah, same.
And that scared the shit out of me. I
remember watching it. Yeah, The Shining. I really enjoyed The Shining.
You know what else scared the shit out of me was the Blair Witch Project when I was young. Now, when I'm looking back now, I'm like,
I remember watching Paranormal Activity, going to the cinema for a friend's birthday to see that when I was like 12, and scared the shit out of me.
Yeah, I saw Blair Witch in the theater in 1999. I think I had to sneak in because it was rated R. And yeah, I mean, if you look back at it now, it's a little tame, but it was the first movie to really do that. And
like the whole PR where they kept the cast out of the public eye and they told everybody it was a real story. I'm like, I ain't never going in the fucking woods again.
And it has a pretty good payoff. Like the last scene that you see where the guy's in the corner.
In the corner? Oh my
pretty
God.
Scary.
Yeah.
Pretty good.
Yeah. And Paranormal Activity, the first one, that scared the shit.
Yeah, that scared the shit out of me as well.
But as for recent stuff, no, I haven't really seen a whole lot. What was the most recent one? There was loads of them. Was it The Omen?
The first Omen. The first Omen,
yeah. And then the haunting at...
The haunting in Connecticut.
One of them houses. What was it?
I didn't see that one.
I can't think.
Haunting in Connecticut is a recent one, yeah.
Yeah. But anyway, Clint, can you just tell us a little bit about growing up, what it was like, how you got into music? Give a kind of a quick recap of your journey through music.
How much time do you guys have? Sure. It was a cold day in 1983. I was born in Birmingham, Alabama, and single mom. I had a stepdad for a little while. She had some boyfriends, but for most intents and purposes, kind of single mom. And latchkey kid, which for that what that means over here is like mom would leave and they would just latch the door shut so that we couldn't get outside, and then we had to sort of fend for ourselves. That's what a lot of my childhood was. A lot of my childhood was like I was in a loving home, but my mom was always working and doing adult shit. You know, like as a dad now of a 10-year-old, I think a lot about we're so involved in our daughter's life, and I was like, man, it just really was not like that when I was growing up. My parents, when they were hanging with their buds, we could be around, but it was a do not speak, learn, absorb adult time. And actually, we loved it. We loved being around the adults because they never really quit doing adult shit around us. And we were always sponging it up. Whereas now, if I'll be hanging with my buddies and my daughter comes in, she becomes a part of what she's just so involved in our lives. But I was pretty much left to my own devices. And so if you're a kid in a small town in Alabama, you're only really way out of that is records and movies and books. And so I was kind of a kid that was always consuming culture and art, watched a lot of movies. My first memory of being alive, my online moment, I remember I was watching Nightmare on Elm Street. It was just on television. I was not being supervised. I was 3 or 4. So this would have been 87. And I remember my memory is there's a scene where a character named Tina is cut open and then drug across the ceiling and blood just pouring by the gallons out of her stomach. And I remember watching that and being shocked by it and knowing like, I probably shouldn't be watching this. And I remember turning around where like my grandparents had a his and hers like recliner chair and just no one's there. Like, does any adult here care about me? Is anyone going to make sure I don't see shit like this? And the answer was no. The answer was no, of course. So, but that's kind of the kid I was. And music was a big part of that too. Just being able to escape into a record, whether it was my first CD was Michael Jackson Dangerous, or of course, like harder stuff. And I was a big fan of the 90s grunge shit, big Pearl Jam guy, Alice in Chains and Tool. And of course, Metallica was a big part of that when I was a kid. And that turns into being 11 and 12 and 13. My best friend gets a guitar, so I got a guitar. We started our little bands, and then somehow all these years later, it's what I do for a living. So that's kind of the quick story.
Yeah, man.
Awesome, man.
Yeah, a lot of that is actually very relatable. I also grew up with as my mom and dad separated when I was younger too, and stepdad and stuff. But my stepdad actually kind of paved the way in a way with a lot of music and stuff. He brought a lot of... I remember, I don't know if you remember, I told you about my neighbor actually brought Metallica and stuff like that into my life. But my stepdad kind of brought like Radiohead, the Smiths, The Cure.
So he was a sensitive guy.
Yeah.
Then on the other hand,
What?
what else was he into? Punk?
Oh, he was big into punk, The Clash and all that.
Yeah, Stiff Little Fingers.
Yeah, Stiff Little Fingers. They were a band from Belfast. And he was big into the punk. He was into the punk scene. But yeah, he opened doors as well, which was great. But like you just said, I have a daughter as well. And like so relatable what you just said. I remember being in rooms with adults and you would just speak when spoken to. And being surrounded by cigarette smoke and just
cans of beer, beer.
Yeah, doing beer runs, getting a sip.
My parents, I was just going to say, my parents would offer us, like, you want to try it? And I remember one time declining, and I must have been 7 or 8, and I think my dad was like, it's no big deal. And I was like mad at him for offering it to me because I was like, you shouldn't be doing this. This is bad. And he's like, these were like Montgomery, Alabama, like southern, even from where I grew up in Birmingham, like southern Alabama, where, we were on the porch with all the adults and they were getting drunk and smoking. And it was awesome. It was thrilling. They weren't really, what they were just doing is they were just living their lives. I mean, my parents were so young when they had my sister and I, they were in their early 20s. Yes, I didn't have my daughter till I was 30. So what they were really doing when I was 7 and 8 was just being 20-year-old dumbasses and figuring it out. And they mellowed out into their 30s, as we kind of all do a little bit. But we were just along for the ride. And I do think my daughter's getting a better version of being 8 than I did. Yeah. But I do worry that she's missing some of that, like, I don't know, man, the grit of that. I remember one time we called it a carport, but it's like a covered porch area with a big swing. And I remember my dad's friend, I can't remember his name, but he's so drunk and he was always fun. Everyone liked him, funny guy. And then he just passed out and fell face down. But like one of those scary falls where you don't try to stop yourself. Like he just fell and busted his nose and blood, and kind of horrifying and thrilling at the same time, like it was just like danger everywhere, but you were with your parents, so it couldn't be that bad, Yeah. My daughter's
like one of those It's like one of those stories. There's a hotel close to us that has a balcony, and it's notorious for people have fallen off it at 3 or 4 in the morning when they're inebriated after a few drinks, and it's like the one or two stories where a guy actually falls off it and lands it perfectly and isn't hurt and like gets back up and someone's like, he's grand, just get him a drink.
Yeah, well, he deserves a reward for being a part of a miracle when that happens. Yeah, for sure.
But it's so different right now, Clint, isn't it? Like you said about your daughter. Like I know it's so weird. I had my daughter when I was like 32, and like back then, when that guy obviously had too much to drink, like in my head, I'd like get a stick and start poking him or something, you know. But now kids would be like, I think like kids are just so much more educated and so much more clued in to everything. Like my daughter will tell me like if I'm having a beer or something, oh, she's like, Dad, that's bad for you.
Oh yeah.
Whereas back then, you ain't saying this damn thing.
This reminds me of like the Napster ad they done from Metallica back in the day, and remember they made James out to be this ape. It was like beer good. Napster bad.
Yeah, those are like early internet days for me. Yeah, I mean, the difference is, I think if I'm having what we call a ring-a-ding night with the boys, if we're having a cigar or having some drinks on the porch or getting a little loose or talking about adult shit, I keep my daughter away from that. I tell her to go to bed. I'm like, get out of here. You know, like, go be a kid in your room, you know? And she pretends to saunter off and be offended. But it's like, I just keep those worlds a little more separate.
Yeah, I think it's better off too.
Yeah.
I think so. I think people like us grew up like that. And while we can joke about it now and talk fondly about it, I think we realize as parents now, like, that's probably not great, that kind of access. You know?
Yeah, like you had said, Clint, about the Freddy Krueger, you know, the Nightmare on Elm Street scene. I remember watching The Departed when I was quite young, thinking it was great until Captain Queenan gets thrown over the side of the building and you see his head splatter off the pavement. I'm like, ooh.
Yeah, you know, my daughter really loves movies, which is such a fun thing for me because she wants to watch movies all the time. So her at 10, and she's a pretty smart 10. Everyone thinks their kid's a genius, but she's pretty smart at 10 and she can handle shit. But I'm like wondering what movies to show her. Like the other day, I was like, I wonder if she can watch The People Under the Stairs, this Wes Craven movie from the 90s. Like, I'm way more careful about what she has seen than anyone gave a shit about. I didn't see the part. It would have been '06, so that's later for me. But yeah, like I remember seeing Casino, which was a Scorsese movie from '95 or '6, and they put a guy's head in a vice and then they crank it until his eyes pop out. And that was another moment where I was probably 13 and I was probably looking around like, is anyone going to stop this from happening around me? Does anyone
like
love
the
me?
chainsaw and Scarface?
Oh yeah, I remember that. Yeah.
I didn't get hip to De Palma until later. I went through a big De Palma thing probably when I was 31 or 32. I somehow never saw that. I saw Casualties of War. I saw Carrie. I saw some of his big ones, but I somehow never saw Scarface until I was grown. And when you watch it in your 30s, you're like, it's a little hokier. It doesn't have the power that I think it had for a lot of people who saw it when they were younger.
Yeah. So you're very busy, like you said, touring with Morgan. Do you want to tell our listeners a little bit about that? You're supporting Alanis Morissette. You're all over America.
Yeah.
There was a new release this week, was it? Was there a new release? Yeah.
We just had a new album come out that I produced for her. So it's been an exciting couple of weeks.
Awesome.
So she is an artist from Virginia, a very small town in Virginia. And it's country music, but it's not really. It's more like Jason Isbell or Chris Stapleton. It's country music that I would like to personally listen to. It's not super mainstream.
Yeah, I've had to listen. It's good.
It's more like song oriented. The records are really great. So what happened was she was opening for Jason Isbell in the 400 unit at some festival in Virginia, and Sadler Vaden, a friend of ours, a really good friend of ours, he heard her on a side stage, kind of just doing the local, there's like a little side stage for the local singer-songwriter coffee shop stuff. And he heard her and basically, long story short, kind of discovered her and produced her first record, which was called Reckless. All DIY, all independent. And that was a breakout record for her. She ended up getting signed to Sony, got a major label deal. And then I started touring with her right after that as her band leader and guitar player. So, we started just opening for people in a van in small clubs. And now we're headlining our own big club shows, theater shows. And then we just did when we go out and open for people, it's big marquee artists. We just did Alanis Morissette and Joan Jett. which was like 50 shows in amphitheaters and arenas. We've done tours with Luke Combs and Chris Stapleton. We have her third album just came out that I actually produced for her, which is pretty exciting.
Nice.
And that's kind of what we're up to. Yeah, we're just touring and putting out records and trying to grow her thing. So it's been fun. It's been a good couple of years. That was my first gig after COVID, which COVID was 18 months of no work other than whatever I could do from home, podcasting, editing, songwriting. But I've mainly made my living as a touring musician. So I've been with Morgan ever since the world kind of thawed out. In a lot of ways, it feels like I've always been with her, because that just felt like such a rebirth of getting back in the saddle of playing music live.
Cool.
So that's been a busy schedule for sure, Clint. And the ball has seemed to have been rolling pretty quickly. You haven't really had much time to stop until now by the sounds of things.
Yeah, I mean, we'll get a few days off here and there. If I have more than two, even on the Alanis tour, if there were more than 2 days off, I fly home to try to be with my family. And then, which we have our tour manager is great about that. And she helps me get home when I can. A couple of the other guys on the bus have families too. And we try to, I've been doing this a long time, so we have pretty good muscle for it. Like for, I think, a week and a half when we were in New England, all the shows were within 3 hours for about 2 weeks. And my wife and daughter flew up and we just rented a car and we just sort of got our own hotel rooms and lived off the tour. Nice. I would drive myself to the shows. We would play the show. And then I think we only stayed for one. And then we would immediately go to the next town. And we were doing sightseeing in Boston and Rhode Island. And a couple of the nights we did actually get tickets to the Alanis gig. And we as a family went down to the front row with a really good friend of mine who plays guitar for Alanis. His name's Jason Orm. Great guitar player, great guy. His wife and daughter were out too. And so there was a really beautiful 7-day span where Nova and his daughter, Alessandra, were just playing all through the arena.
Oh, that's nice.
My daughter actually having good fun together.
Oh yeah, and then they don't even know how cool that is,
Yeah,
I'm like,
you guys time they're gonna think having chats in 10 years, 20 years time, going, holy shit! Do you know what we did with kids?
Yeah, she'd be like, we're so bored. I'm like, you have an empty amphitheater while we're sound checking. Go run around. She met Alanis before I did because there were some dogs on the tour. Alanis had a few dogs. My boss Morgan bought a dog, and so the kids are running around backstage with dogs, and Alanis came into our dressing room to say hi. But before we really got that conversation going, my daughter runs right into her. And
to see the dog.
Yeah, well, my daughter just cares about the dog. So Alanis was like, oh, hey, beautiful. Who are you? What's your name? She was like, I'm Nova. That's my dad. Who are you? And we're all like, oh my God, dude. That's Alanis Morissette. That's the reason we're here. Don't embarrass me. Which she didn't, but... Yeah, it's a cool thing that we were able to do at this stage of family life and touring, a way to meld those.
That's awesome, man. That's so cool that you get to have that normality, but yet you're deep in that scene of touring, but you got to have that real life experience with your kid and having friends with other kids among the tour as well. But I heard you saying in your podcast too that Alanis is still absolutely smashing it out the park.
Oh, dude, she was amazing, especially at a time when ticket sales are really strange. Some bands are having to cancel tours because ticket sales are weird, because the cost of touring is really expensive and no one makes music off recorded music anymore, or makes money off recorded music. So it's interesting in that climate to see a summer tour. I think 4 or 5 of the shows were officially sold out. We had to add a second night, but almost every show was 97% sold. And so... Nice. Even her band, who I got really close to on the road, band muckety muck guys hanging out together, having a whiskey, talking shit. And, they're all a little older than me. I was a big Alanis Morissette fan when I was 12. So I'm slowly letting them know that I'm a pretty big fan and that I've been paying attention to what they've been up to. And I'm like, man, you guys are crushing it. You guys are selling 30,000 tickets a night, off the strength of really this Jagged Little Pill album from 1997, I think. And even they were surprised at the feedback they're getting and the amount of people that are interested. And I think it was a good bill too. It's Alanis and Joan Jett, living legend Joan Jett. And then I think Morgan, having Morgan on as first of 3, we brought our own heat to that tour. There's a lot of people excited to see Morgan. And so it was just a good bill. I think people are at a certain age in their 40s and 50s where they have the money they're feeling pretty nostalgic for that time in their lives.
Definitely.
But man,
definitely.
it was a really successful tour, mostly for Alanis. Obviously, she's the one on the marquee and selling the tickets. And it was interesting to see that even her band was like a little pleasantly shocked by the reception. And if you saw,
I think you might have nailed it too.
It was a killer's show. I mean, they absolutely crushed it. Like, they didn't come out there and trot out some nostalgic bullshit. You know what I mean? Like, they really put together a great show that the ripple effect of like, oh yeah, I went to the Alanis show. How was it? It was actually really awesome. And when they come through your town, you should go. Like, I think that the word got out that it was a good bill, you know?
Yeah.
And I watched that. We did, it wasn't 50 shows. I think it was 50 days, maybe. It was like 35 or 36 shows. I watched like 26 of them, which is, I never do that. If we're opening or a band's opening for us, I'll check it out a few times, get a flavor for it. But then once I see what it is, I'm good, you know? I watched her show a lot because I just thought it was so cool. It was such a good show. So anyway, I interrupted one of you with saying something.
Oh, sorry, you know
that was awesome, man. Great to hear
that's
it.
a great story.
I was going to ask, have you any European dates coming up soon with Morgan? Have you any plans to come this side of the pond?
Yeah, we do. We're coming. I don't know the details, but I know we're coming back over there in 2025. We've been going.
That'll be awesome.
Yeah, we did. We've done Belfast and Dublin. The first time we went to Scotland, we'd never been there. She sold like 1,500 tickets. So
yeah, because I went on her Instagram page and like a lot of my friends follow Morgan. Like so like she's definitely big over here too. You know,
yeah,
which is awesome, and she deserves it.
We went from we did 2 nights at a place in London called the Garage, which is like 700-800 cap room, and we did 2 nights there. And the next time we went to London, we did Royal Albert Hall.
Oh, nice.
So we need to get back over there for sure. We've been going every year. I'm trying to think. We're not going this year, but we are coming back next year. I don't know the dates, but I'll make sure you guys know, and we'll have to hang if I'm coming near you for sure.
You'll have to come through and have a Guinness and see what's happening.
Definitely. We bring you to Bono's house.
Oh yeah, I told you guys about that, the Uber driver.
Yeah.
That's awesome, man. But funny, what I was going to say to you was, remember you were talking about almost the nostalgia of the 13-year-old. I was a similar age to you when Jagged Little Pill came out. And, well, to me anyway, my older cousins, you know, that was their prime. But because that album has held its weight in time, now it's coming around to like my age group now again. I think it's like, it's a no-brainer. You got to go see her. You're lucky to even have the chance to go and catch Alanis. So, like, I'm not really surprised that she's selling out them.
You guys still there? You broke up a little bit.
Oh
yeah, something just happened that the iTunes just opened in the middle of that. So I don't know what happened. We're back again.
Heard you say Bono. Heard you say Bono, and then it automatically started playing the U2 album that no one wants on there.
The one that had to be on everybody's Apple.
Yeah. But
which, you know what I find fascinating about that with them is I'm a really huge U2 fan, and that album was not good, and it was just such a bad time for them to sort of assume everyone in the world wanted to hear a U2 album. It's like, if that had been Octoon Baby, everyone would have been like, okay, this rocks. Yeah. But it was a pretty sleepy, shitty album. And everyone was that was just bad for them. But anyway, yeah, the nostalgic thing with Alanis, I mean, people like think, she's one of those artists where people think they know a few of the songs. And then you go to a concert like that and you realize you know almost every song. You know, she had 7 or 8 number ones off that first album. That was just such a
yesterday,
huge album.
funny enough. I was on a long drive yesterday because we do some album reviews and we're definitely going to hit that album up soon to do a whole review on it. And I give it a spin yesterday. I'm like, oh, it's so good. The lyrics are unbelievable.
Yeah,
unbelievable.
That was her power. Her power was like coming in hot with that so perspective. Yeah, they're relatable and they're about relationships. And she knew when to put her teeth in it. She knew when to be vulnerable, and she had an interesting perspective. She was scary and mysterious. She had a great band, I think Glenn Ballard produced that album, who also like did, Man in the Mirror with Michael Jackson, like a guy that knows how to channel, how to channel an artist that's kind of, Alanis is very like stream of consciousness type artist. So it's almost like a word vomit, emotional catharsis. Her whole thing is about catharsis,
And there's a lot of like Flea and Dave Navarro and Taylor Hawkins, and there's so many different collaborations on that album. But I look forward to doing that review.
Yeah, that'll be fun.
Clint, I'd like to talk about your songwriting, your rough trade. Can you tell us a little bit about that? And I'd love to know, like, your process, like recording, what kind of goes through your head, or what's your process kind of thing.
Yeah, so I've always written songs, but been primarily a guitar player for people, like a side guy. And then moving to Nashville, we moved here in 2011 to pursue music. Well, I did. My wife came with me, thank goodness. And one of the things that you also pursue here, because no one can really just be one thing anymore. Like in the 90s, I could have just been the second guitar player for the Goo Goo Dolls, and I would have been fine. That would have been my career. Or I could have been the keyboard player in Semisonic, and that's what I would have done, or whatever. Now you have to do so many things. You have to produce, and you have to know how to engineer. You have to be good at marketing yourself. And so one of the things I got into in Nashville when I first got into town was songwriting. And man, it was tough. It was like starting over. Like as a guitar player, I had a pedigree and had a resume, and I would get gigs based on word of mouth because people knew what I could do, and people would say, "Oh, Clint's great. He can do that," or whatever. With songwriting, I had to convince people, or I had to earn a lot of trust in town that I could actually write songs. And so it's a big part of the culture here if you're a songwriter to co-write almost every day. You're writing with people. You're making demos. We call them work tapes. You're trying to get a publishing deal. The publishing deal is kind of the end goal of that. If you get a publishing deal, that means you get paid to write, and then you have an infrastructure and a company that are pitching your songs to artists that are going to sing them and make money. In Nashville, a lot of the country music scene, which is the industry here, people, we call them outside rights. So people will cut songs that they didn't write, and that's not really frowned upon here. And actually, there's like a really large history of that within music, going all the way back to Elvis. I sort of do come from the school because of the way I was raised, and I've always gravitated towards bands that write their own material. I don't want to hear Lane Staley sing another dude's songs. I want to hear Lane Staley. I think the 80s and 90s was big on like personal perspective, even to tie that back to Alanis Morissette. Like 90s music is very esoteric and strange, and the lyrics don't go from A to B. They're, you know what I mean? If you think about your average Soundgarden song, it'd be hard to really say what Black Hole Sun's about, right? It's really more about a feeling. Yeah, it's about, well, who fucking knows what he's talking about, Yeah.
Even some of the Tool stuff, like you had mentioned from that era, is like,
yeah, I mean, and you don't even really want to know what some of that's about,
No, definitely not.
You need to be
like prison sex. You could do Prison Sex and Stinkfist. You can draw your own conclusions, but
Hooker with a Penis,
Hooker with a Penis. Which actually, Hooker with a Penis is actually a pretty deep song, because that song's about, obviously, a hooker with a penis is something that you weren't expecting. It's something that was advertised falsely, but that song is about someone who claims to be a Tool fan accusing him of selling out because they won a Grammy or whatever, or because they were on MTV. So the Tool fan was the hooker with the penis. Anyway, that's for a whole different podcast. But
man, that'd be great. I'd absolutely love to have a drink with Maynard. It would be incredible.
He would probably just insult us the whole time, which is what, and then we would love him for it, because that's what he.
I'd be cool enough with it if it was Maynard.
Yeah. He's like who's the comedian that would always insult you, but it was like a rite of passage, Damn it, who's the guy? Anyway, so anyway, in Nashville, it's really common for other professional songwriters to write the songs that you hear on the radio. So, and I was very interested in getting involved with that because I know how to write songs. I like assignment writing. I really love the idea of like, Carrie Underwood is looking for a song that about whatever, about being a mom or about going out with the girls, or Tim McGraw's looking for a song that he wants to write about being a father, teams of writers write all this stuff, which I used to think was kind of lame. But it's a whole industry here, and it's really cool. And so I got tapped into it. A lot of my friends were big writers in town, and I like to write songs, or write a lot of songs. So I got tapped into that and started from the ground up. I mean, I was co-writing with anyone who would write with me and amassing a pretty big body of work. And then I was writing with artists who were cutting all the songs we were writing. And the way I got my publishing deal was with Rough Trade was my friend Elise Davis, who's an artist in town. I just started writing with her. I don't even know how we started writing, but it was like a cold call type thing. I think maybe she Instagrammed me. I can't even remember. And we wrote everything together. And she has a couple of records out that I wrote everything on. And she had the publishing deal with Rough Trade. And whenever you register your songs through like BMI or ASCAP, they have to, there's a whole system for how everyone gets paid and gets credited. And I got contacted by Rough Trade because they were like, every time we deal with these Elise Davis batches of songs, your name's always on them. So they just got interested in me through that. So we started having meetings, and then they signed me to my first publishing deal. So all that, and it's also a licensing deal. So all that really means is I now write kind of under their banner, and they help me get songs put on records for country artists or for pop artists. They set me up with other co-writers. So like if I'm touring through, this has happened a few times. If I'm touring through New York or LA, where their offices are, they'll say, hey, if you've got a few days off, you should write with this person, or you should write with Ginny Lewis, or you should write with whoever. So they'll sort of broker those. They get me cuts on records, and then the licensing part of it is for film and TV. So they'll say, the show Love is Blind need a bunch of songs that are like this with a female vocalist. And then I'll go find someone that I write with that has a great voice. We'll write a bunch of shit in my studio, record it, send it to them. And if anything lands, they get a piece of it. So I feel like I'm kind of rambling, but
this is really interesting. And the question I was going to ask was, for anyone who would have interest in getting into songwriting, what would be the pathway? But you're explaining it pretty good.
I did have a few publishing meetings before Rough Trade that were pretty disheartening, like kind of the stories that you hear about. Someone did me, I think it was Paul Moak, did me a favor and he had a publishing deal for a while. He's a great friend of mine, producer, musician in town. And I remember that meeting, I could tell that the guy didn't really want to have the meeting. And he said, do you want to write? He said, well, okay, well, what kind of stuff do you write? Do you want to write cool stuff, or you want to write stuff that makes money? And it was like classic, like kind of industry villain, And I was like, man, I want to write Free Fallin' by Tom Petty. That song is as cool as it gets, and it made a ton of money. Like, why does it have to be? This guy was just so cynical about it. Yeah, and in that environment, I brought in a CD. This was in 2011 that had like 15 of my songs on it. Well, he wanted me to play them on a guitar, and I was like, hey, I'm not really that kind of. I'm not really that guy. I've got demos that I made. Because another thing, there's like in town, if you make demos, this is like a way that you can get cuts too. It's like, really, I'm a producer. Technically, what you would label me in town as a producer writer. So someone like Morgan would come into my studio with me, and under the idea of like, let's write a song today. Really, she's bringing the heat, and I want her to bring the heat, the songwriting heat. And then I'm helping her flesh out a demo that sounds pretty good. Like she would walk out of here after 4 hours with a song and with a recording that sounds pretty damn good. And then based on the strength of that recording, someone could hear that. Miranda Lambert could hear that and be like, I want to cut that song. Yeah. And me producing the demo out lets someone else kind of hear what it could be. Sometimes, though, people don't like that. They want it as bare bones as possible because they don't care what I think it could be. They don't need to hear the furniture I put in that room. They just want to see the house and make sure it has enough space to accomplish what they want to accomplish. So there's all different ways to do it. I don't really know what I would even tell an aspiring songwriter now, because I feel like I just had my head down and worked hard and kind of fell into some of it.
Well, that's a great way to explain it, Clint. As you said, it's like, look, some people want the house unfurnished and some people want it furnished.
And you never know, but the tough thing is you never know. And the people who gatekeep those decisions, they don't really know either. That's the kind of bullshitty part of it, is like no one really knows what they're doing. There are things in place that tend to work, but then someone like the example I usually give is Maren Morris. Like someone like Maren Morris will happen. She moved to town from Texas, wrote all of her own shit, and kind of blew it all up. Like did her own thing outside of a system. And it was cool. But then what happened in town was it reverberated through Nashville. And then what happened was everyone was trying to do the Maren Morris thing. And that doesn't work really. Like
not for everybody.
Really, yeah, you can't. Well, it's like all the bands that tried to sound like Pearl Jam after 10 came out.
Yeah, now, Creed and all that, correct?
Right, and I think Creed's cool, and Creed kind of has its own power, but they're definitely a Pearl Jam ripoff. You know, like those guys wanted to be Pearl Jam. I mean, who didn't? I'm not knocking it, but what happened to them isn't really what happened to Pearl Jam. And really, what the world and what the industry want is a true artist to come in different and do their own thing. That's why Maren was so killer. That's why Billie Eilish was killer.
Alanis.
Alanis Morissette for sure did that. I mean, she tried a pop thing. She was like a pop star in Canada.
Yeah, the first album, yeah.
She got like scooped up by a record company, and she was a good looking young kid, and she was obviously talented. And they tried to push her through the cheese grater machine, and and it didn't work. You unleash her on her own shit with her own voice, and everyone's saying, I don't know if you can put out a single about sucking someone's dick in a theater. And she's like, well, we'll see. And you know what I mean? She's 30 million albums later. It's like, okay, maybe you were right about that.
Yeah, she fucking was, man. She was.
Look, you hear those stories all the time. It's like the ones that I laugh the most of is John Mayer talking about presenting Continuum to the board, and they're like, you need to go back. You have no hits on here.
Yeah.
You know, it's like such a good album. And on that note, funny enough, you might know one of the coolest session drummers in the game at the minute is out in Nashville, the one and only Aaron Sterling.
Oh, yeah.
And Aaron had give a great piece of advice in a masterclass I took part in a while ago, as I'm a drummer myself and aspiring to do more sessions in Ireland and bits and pieces like that, and even remotely. And I'm wondering, do you think of it this way at all at times when you're writing songs, Clint? And he had talked about listening to the bare bones of something and saying, okay, it's like 2 things I've got to think about here. And 3, actually, because number 1, I got to take my ego out of it altogether and not play exactly what I want to play, but I've got to think, what does the artist want to hear on this track? And what does the listener want to hear? Trying to think from those perspectives.
Yeah, it's a weird blend of, I do think you have to do that. I think that what you want to do isn't that important. You have to be of service to the song. And what's really great is when those 2 things collide. You've got someone like Steve Jordan playing for someone like John and a million other people. Well, what Steve wants to do is usually right. I mean, he's playing with the Stones now, and I'm a big Steve Jordan fan. I don't know if you're hip to Steve Jordan. I'm sure you are.
Man, Steve Jordan is one of my favorite drummers, and actually, a funny one today. What just landed in the post is an old 60s Rogers kick drum, a 14x20. I'm getting all in on the Steve vibe at the minute, and I have a 7x12 Brady, like he would have used in the mid 2000s, and like that snare Tony's got on Stitched Up with the Herbie Hancock thing. And John, that really
he had a signature snare for a while that if we do sessions,
the Yamaha one,
we're like bring that Steve Jordan drum. But yeah, sometimes it'll happen to where when you hire, I mean, we're talking about Steve Jordan, right? We're talking about like one of the greatest ever. So when you hire someone like Jim Keltner or Steve Jordan or Josh Freese, you want them to play what they're hearing, but that doesn't really apply to everybody. Sometimes guys are like much better than what they're playing on in terms of like technicality. So I think about actually like a lot of Jim Keltner stuff on John Lennon's solo records, where he was definitely underplaying to serve what John Lennon was doing when he was making Imagine. No one wants to hear a musician that's obviously just playing because they want to hear themselves, wank off. Like no one likes that. That doesn't even happen that much here because that gets weeded out so quickly in the process. But
I'd say it's like dog eat dog at the start, I suppose, right, Clint? Like I'm sure it's not easy to get where you are right now at that. Like I'm sure, as you said, to get that first step is just really tough in the industry.
What I've found is you sort of come up with a class, for better or worse analogy. You have a class of people. Like when I landed in town, the first few people I started getting beers with and getting gigs with and getting in a van with, there's like my class. We still all sort of keep up. And you get out of that, and I met people that were ahead of me who mentored me a little bit. And then I've become really good friends with people that maybe started a little after me, who eclipse me, or whatever it is. But you generally have a class of people that you come up with. And the best thing to do is stay there and help each other. And then someone levels up and then they bring you. Someone else gets a great gig over here and they put your name in the hat for an audition for this, or, you know, like that's really what happened mostly. So when you find your people, everyone's helping each other. It's not super cutthroat. I think, and it's almost like being in prison, you know, where like you have to join a group to be protected. It's like you get protected from the cutthroat shit when you're in a group. But outside of that group, yeah, I mean, it's like anything. People are vying for the same work, and people, you know, you have that thing where you're happy for someone, but you also maybe feel envious, which I think envy is a good thing. You know, we're sort of taught, the Judeo-Christian is to not be envious. So I think envy, unless it poisons you, it can be really good because it motivates you. You see something and you're like, I want that. How do I get that? Yeah. I'm glad they have it. I'm not going to try to, you know, do anything to take it from them.
I'm going to try and strive to get it.
Envy, as you said, Clint, is what drives you, where I think jealousy is the problem, because then you become bitter and resentful.
Yeah. You have to channel that into something positive. Like, what are you going to do about it? Like, sometimes, I mean, dude, the world isn't that nice. Sometimes people get opportunities that they don't deserve. Sometimes people get a foot in the door because of who they know, or because of nepotism, and that's, you know, so what? What are you going to do about it? You got to work hard. You got to look for your opportunities. And when the big thing here is, there's so many things are out of your control. You know, like you really can't control the timing, and you can't control what people hear about you, even if you're doing good work over here and you're trying to let as many people know about you as possible. But what you can control is, if a door opens and you walk through it, you need to crush it. You need to be good at it. You need to let everyone know when you go through that door that you belong in that room. You know, like you can control that. And worrying about what other people's success is useful for a minute as a motivator. But beyond that, you can't control that either. So yeah, there are people in town who get embittered, for sure. People who leave the industry because it's hard. I mean, I get it. Yeah. But I try to just keep my head down and keep working.
Yeah. We got to talk about...
Focus on where your feet are and keep it going.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think you should go with the Bernard Purdy method, where you have like best songwriter in the world all around you, best drummer in the world.
Yeah, everyone secretly believes that he did a lot of those early Beatles recordings.
No way.
That's like the big Bernard Purdy joke, yeah.
Yeah, that's the inside industry joke.
Anytime the Beatles come up, yeah. Like, and it blossoms into like, oh, you know, who played the it blossoms into like the other instruments, you know. Was that Eric Clapton or George Harrison on the solo to While My Guitar Gently Weeps? Like, oh, it was probably Bernard Purdy, actually, you know. According to Bernard Purdy himself. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Clint, we got to talk about your podcast, your Metal Up Your podcast. How did it all come about? And we were delighted to be a guest on your podcast a couple of weeks ago. You're absolutely smashing it.
All came about from Clint seeing that video of James Hetfield when he was like 4, going, metal up your ass.
Yeah. It was another quiet evening in the fall of 1992.
On the porch in Alabama.
Exactly. Well, I used to have a co-host for 5 or 6 years. I did it with my friend Ethan Luck, another musician in town, a good friend of mine. And it's actually his idea. We met and became friends because we both love Metallica. We had mutual friends who put us together at a bar one night and said, all right, y'all start talking about Metallica. And I don't think we stopped talking about it, you know, until the bar closed. And so he had an idea to do the podcast, because I guess he was a little more hip to podcast culture than me. I think I was listening to him, but I'd never even thought of doing one ever. And he said, man, there's not really anyone talking about this. And I can't remember if we already knew a new album was coming out or if we just started it because of the timing, but we decided to start it. We had a few brainstorming sessions over some beers about what it should be called and what we wanted it to look like. And really the same show that I do now 7 years later is from that first brainstorming idea of like, we wanted it to be conversational. We wanted it to have insights from the music industry because we felt like that was an interesting angle for us. He was also and is also a professional musician. And we wanted to do albums. We wanted to like cover albums, cover eras of the band, talk about their gear, talk about James Hetfield's mustache. We sort of built out, what we wanted it to look like. And I'm still doing that to this day. So yeah, it started on New Year's Day. We released our first episode of 2017, and Metallica had a new album, their first new album in like 8 years. Hardwired. And we had no idea, what would happen and if anyone would care about what we had to say about it. And very quickly amassed a pretty big listenership. And I think we eclipsed 1 million downloads in the first 2 years.
And that's incredible. What a milestone to hit.
Yeah, it was cool. We were really excited. And we were traveling when we weren't on the road. We were going to shows and meeting people. And we used to go and pass out like koozies. We had a very like grassroots, we would just talk to anyone who wanted to listen about our podcast and about Metallica. And it was such an exciting time because they had a new album, as you guys know about, that was really good. And then they went on a 3-year world tour. And so there's just a lot to talk about. And through the podcast, we've met so many people. And to this day, last time I went to Europe, almost every stop, someone from the podcast community came to a show and had a beer. And so that's wild. I mean, it's one thing we throw these parties once a year in Nashville. It's one thing to have a couple hundred people show up from like regionally. And some people flew in actually from all over the country. But another thing to be in like, Germany, in Berlin, or I think in Munich, a few people came out to say hi from the podcast. So it's been a trip, man. It's been a wild ride, and it's still going somehow.
It's awesome, somehow. Man. I've been listening a while, and it's really good. And you get an honest review of the concerts, which I love. And it's not some bullshit. You know what I mean? It's honesty. It's true fans like yourself, like your listeners, shooting the shit about Metallica. It's absolutely brilliant. You're smashing it, man.
Thanks, dude. Yeah, it's gotten to a point where we've become friends with some of the insiders of the band. And then I think we've been told sometimes the band even checks the podcast out. Who knows if that's true? It might not be true. But I do feel that a little bit on my shoulder when I'm like being critical about something. Because, when you guys must do this on your podcast when you review albums. You're going to be critical about them because why else would anyone listen if you're just going to kiss their ass? But it's not stuff I would say to them. I don't want to hurt anyone's feelings about art that they're making, like
Lars is definitely going to tell you, is like, fuck you, man, I wrote that fucking song. Like, what the fuck do you know? I sold 100 million records, man.
I know. And he'd be right, but I think that, podcasts have to be also entertaining and interesting. And I think one of the ways that you are entertaining and interesting is if you're being honest and if you're just letting it go, And I think also the love that I have for that band wouldn't really ring true or resonate if it didn't also come with me being like, I'm not sure what they were doing here. I really don't know about that,
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. For sure. Have you heard any news, Clint, or are you excited about the possible announcement of the Asia tour for next year?
I'm excited about them going to Asia and Australia, New Zealand, because I know that part of the world's missed them for a long time. I'm excited, and I don't have any insider information, but I am excited about a possible announcement about U.S. dates. I don't know about the UK, but there's rumor that they might do some more U.S. touring next year. And I'm hoping that it's not stadiums. I'm hoping it's arenas.
Yeah.
We talked about that, actually.
Yeah, you can't beat an arena. Obviously, we all know why, the quality and sound and everything. But, like from listening to, was it, you had a guy on was it the Edmonton? He wasn't overly impressed with the sound.
Yeah, whether it's been someone on the podcast or I tend to read reviews of the shows every weekend that they play just to check them out and see what everyone's saying. It's pretty common that there's sound issues depending on where you're sitting in these stadiums. They're just not really set up to accommodate all the.
We went to Madrid and I have to say I thought the sound was pretty damn good.
We would have said that on the podcast. Yeah. And the big thing, I totally understand what you're saying, Clint, in regards to that, because on the Hardwired tour, I got to see them in Gillette Stadium in Foxborough in Massachusetts in May of 2017. And we were sitting up pretty high, and depending what way the wind was blowing.
Yeah.
It was good, and then it was bad, and then we had went down to the lowest, not the floor, but like the lowest cheered seating level for the last 3 songs. I remember when Sandman hit, I was like, wow, the sound's 10 times better down here.
Yeah.
And I thought it was good where we were sitting until I got down lower.
Yeah.
Yeah, I talked to Brad Blazek about this on the Chicago, when we reviewed the Chicago gigs at Soldier Field. It's interesting because they're having to consider the economics and just the demand. Like if you're able to sell 160, 180,000 tickets a weekend, you've got people in your life that are your business managers and your accountants, and not that it's all about that, but it's also not irrelevant. Going, I mean, look, this is your value, this is your market value, and you may not. It may not be this way in 5 years. And so I guarantee you, if you ask James Hetfield, do you want everyone who bought this ticket to have a great, sonic experience? Of course he wants that. But I do think that in these big stadiums that are built for sports, there's going to be some collateral damage in terms of there are people that are not going to have as good an experience. And what I wonder about them is what's their responsibility to that? Like, I wonder even if they did the more traditional like end zone type setup instead of in the round. You're going to cut out, I don't know how many tickets you cut out to do that. Maybe, I don't know, 20,000. Is that worth sacrificing those 20,000 tickets so you can make sure the product's a little better for everybody who's there? Like, I really don't know. I mean, it's every single weekend there are, I would say most people think it sounds great, which is killer. But there's definitely a handful of people that are wherever they happen to be or whatever the wind is like, because sound waves get blown by the wind.
That walk away from it going damage almost. Like, it's just like they're never going to drop down to a 20,000 arena, and because they're probably only able to physically play for like 2 nights in a week. So it probably just financially.
Yeah, those days of doing 5 shows a week or
it's
going
over.
every second night and going here to there is probably over for them. I'd say the band are
probably just kind of going, look, take it or leave it, case. This is all we got.
I think so.
We're trying to entertain as many people as we can in, what our bodies are letting us do. And so, take it or leave it, guys.
I think so. And I think they're at a stage where they've kind of earned it, and I forgive them, and it's all good. I do feel bad about the people that are like, this might be the only time I get to see them, and it costs us much money, and we got a sitter, and for the experience to be what it is. But I don't really know what the solution is, but I do tend to forgive them for it. I think if they did, if they were able to do smaller markets in arenas, it opens up possibilities for the set list to be a little different, for them to change it up a little bit, which I think would be good for everybody.
On that note, Clint, I was going to ask you a very difficult question.
That's a good one.
What would be your dream set list? We'll say, give me 15. I know it's a very hard question.
Well, there's like there's my birthday set list that would be like a private show for me.
Okay, so let's go with that.
We love that.
But then there's a set list of like that I would curate that I think an arena would also enjoy.
Oh, I like that.
Okay.
And I think I would make different decisions, like if I was thinking about not just me, but like maybe all of my friends all over the world, if we were going to go to, a famous club, Kane's Ballroom, so it'd be 1,000 of us, kind of like they did for the 30th anniversary shows.
Right.
I think that set list might be a little different, but man, a dream set list for me, 15 songs. All right. If you want them quick, I don't know if I can do them in order.
Yeah, but
I could tell you quickly. I want to see. Well, okay, let's take it album by album.
Okay, so you can say as many as you want.
Yeah.
Like, you don't have to stick to 15 if you're cool to just go with it.
Well, let's do this. Let's just loosely say 2 songs per album, and I'll start with Kill 'Em All. So Kill 'Em All, I would want to see Hit the Lights and Four Horsemen.
Yeah.
For Lightning, I would like to see the songs Ride the Lightning, and I would like to see Creeping Death. I got to have Creeping Death. They're probably going to play that anyway, but I got to have that. For Puppets, I want to see The Thing That Should Not Be and Disposable Heroes.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
For Justice, I want to see Blackened. I got to have Blackened. I'm not even going to try to pick the ones they don't play. I want to see Blackened, and I want to see the song One.
Yep.
This is at my birthday, by the way. It's my party.
I'll choose one.
This
if I
is
want
your
to.
birthday. You're the birthday boy.
That's me. I'm the big birthday boy. I'm actually turning 41 on Monday, which is why my parents are in town. They're in town to hang for my birthday.
Awesome, man.
Thank you.
Happy birthday.
Black Album, I'm going to choose Through the Never and Sad But True.
Nice.
Those aren't shocking, I guess. I might change out Sad But True. I might put The God That Failed instead of Sad But True.
Oh, yeah, nice. I saw that one in Mannheim in Germany.
I know. I think we talked about that. It's so wild.
Yeah.
It's such a rare song. I think they've played it less than 20 times, right? Or maybe less than 50 times.
Jeez, that was pretty good experience. So,
What are we up to?
that's 10.
It's 10.
Load, I would like to see, I guess I would like to see The Outlaw Torn. Never seen it. And I'd like to see, what else would I like to see from Load? Anything weird from Load I want to see? I mean, I like all the bangers on Load. Maybe House that Jack Built. I'll indulge
That'd be
myself.
great.
One that they've never played. Reload, I'd like to see Fixer, of course. I'd like to see Low Man's Lyric. Big fan of that song.
That'd be
song.
great. Yeah.
Yeah.
And if I go back and put all these down and I can actually make a set list, that would obviously be a great dynamic change. What's after that? Saint Anger, I would want to see Dirty Window. I'd want to see My World. I'll say My World.
I was thinking of that one.
I'm a big fan of Dirty Window.
Yeah, Dirty Window is my favorite on the album. I actually like that album more than I ever have. Okay, next would be Death Magnetic. I want to see Judas Kiss and All Nightmare Long. That was easy. Those came right to mind. I wonder if they'll ever play either of those again.
Hope so.
Hardwired, I'd want to see Dream No More. I did get to see Dream No More in Birmingham, Alabama on the rail. That was killer. I want to see Dream No More and probably Spit Out the Bone again. That was fun. And then for 72 Seasons, I haven't seen Inamorata. Need to see it. And then I'd probably choose either Chasing the Light or Too Far Gone.
Okay.
Nice.
I don't know how many people would enjoy that concert, but
Hey, it's your party, man.
Yeah.
I wonder how much it would cost for me to hire them to do that. I mean, there's a dollar amount that you could pay them to just come play.
I'm sure some of the Saudis might fund that for us if we invite their son or their daughter that's a big fan of Metallica.
Yeah. The Prince of Riyadh can come.
What's your favorite album, Clint?
Of Metallica? I've always maintained that my favorite's Ride the Lightning. When we were kids, we couldn't afford all the CDs we wanted. And this is back when you had to buy music and it meant more to you because it cost something. But I remember to get around that problem, my best friend at the time, his name was Matt Harris. We were literally in a CD store at the Metallica section. This is when we were like 13. And we were holding Master of Puppets and Ride the Lightning. And we were like, all right, here's what we're going to do. You're going to buy one, I'm going to buy one, and then we're just going to let each other borrow them. You know, we're going to spend 2 weeks each with them or whatever. And he got Puppets and I got Ride the Lightning. And I think for that reason, I've always been a Lightning guy because that was the one I got in that deal. But I also think that pound for pound, it's one of their coolest albums. It's still got the raw Kill 'Em All thing. They hadn't quite grown up, but the songwriting got so good. You know, like Fight Fire, Lightning, Fade to Black, of course, Creeping Death, Cthulhu. And then, of course, I even like the two kind of little stragglers, Escape and Trapped Under Ice.
Yeah, Trapped Under Ice is very like Kill 'Em All, I think.
Exactly. Trapped Under Ice could have easily been on Kill 'Em All for sure.
Yeah.
So I think it's Lightning, but really as a Load and Reload guy, I'm really into those albums. And honestly, I'm really, most people say who give it up for Load and Reload, they say that they like Load more, but I'm really more of a Reload guy. The Unforgiven 2 is like a top 5 Metallica song for me. That's my favorite, Unforgiven. I love Unforgiven 2. I like, if you're going to pit some of those albums, sister songs together, I'd rather hear Fixer than Outlaw Torn. I'd rather hear Low Man's Lyric than Mama Said. You know, like, I just feel like the counterparts I like more on Reload. I really like Where the Wild Things Are. Really strange Jason Newsted song.
Slither?
Huge Slither fan.
Bad Seed would be a
Funny, we're going on to a podcast this week to talk about Reload.
Oh, awesome. I can't wait to hear it.
Yeah, a guy from Puerto Rico, I think, right?
Yeah, I forget his name, but he does album reviews, and a friend of ours does album reviews too. Rob Boylan is his name, and he had sort of threw our name in the hat to talk about Reload.
Yeah.
See, I love that. Hold it down for Reload.
It was funny you mentioned the Ride the Lightning, because we reviewed Ride the Lightning a couple of weeks ago. And me personally, I would have always been a Justice guy. Mm-hmm. But when I went back into really listening to Ride, it's me personally, I think I've been converted. I think it's Ride is my favorite. Like, there's no skips on it. It's a fucking masterpiece.
Yeah, and it's kind of short and sweet and really punchy, and it's not extremely ambitious. You know, so and it has some of their best songs. Like, it's just, and it's only 8 songs, but damn, I mean, you know, on these no repeat weekends that they're doing, the album most represented in these 2 shows is Lightning. They play
like half the album gets played.
Yeah, like Creeping Death is arguably one of the best.
Yeah.
Like, what an opener! What an opener!
And there's something kind of clinical about Puppets and Justice that I mean, I love those albums, but they're very mature. They're very they really grew a lot from 84 to 86 and from 86 to 88. They really...
Even his vocals and stuff have changed massively, didn't they?
Yeah. Well, I mean, at that time, they were doing 150, 200 shows a year.
Yeah,
so they're just getting that muscle. Those muscles are getting tight and strong. And it happens with any artist. Once you get, and they're getting better at making records. They're just learning better how to do it. And they're getting more money to make records. There's something about Lightning where they didn't quite know what they were doing still. They didn't really quite have enough money to get into trouble. Yeah. All they really had was the great songs that they're playing mostly, you know, that's the most represented record that they play now from 1984.
Definitely.
It's crazy because I remember listening to an interview with Lars years ago and reading some articles about it where they were like, you know, how did you guys just keep skipping on to another album? And it was like, oh, well, you know, when the Ride the Lightning tour was over, like, none of us had houses or had enough money to buy houses, so it's like, why don't we just keep moving?
Yeah,
right. Yeah, I don't think they knew that they got houses until after the Aussie tour, where they're like business managers, like, oh yeah, you guys all are homeowners now, you know.
Yeah, because like I read somewhere that like they used to stay in fans' houses and stuff like during like Kill 'Em All and Ride, like it was crazy.
Oh
like.
yeah. When they were on that Raven tour, I think they were like in a little Winnebago, and they're probably crashing in cheap hotel rooms and fans' houses for sure, just totally slumming it, you know.
Clint, last question from me, because I'm sure you're busy. You got things to do. Where would be your dream venue to catch Metallica?
Oh man, other than my house?
Yeah,
go right
your
to that.
birthday party.
You know, it would be a small room. I love that they did those gigs at the Fillmore. It would be a small thing that it would be with me and all my friends. I mean, it'd be cool to see them at Red Rocks. It'd be cool. Like, that's like 6,000 maybe 9,000. So that'd still be a bigger show, but it would still be intimate. Like, I know they did the Apollo around the Hardwired season.
What's the famous one in Nashville? The Ryman?
The Ryman, yeah, that's about 3,000. So that would be smaller. It'd be cool to see them at Royal Albert Hall. You know, like really famous. I think that's like 5,000 maybe. But ultimately, my dream, you know, because I grew up on that Motherlode. You remember the MTV Motherlode thing, where they played like in that guy's local bar? I think to have them play at like the local Hendersonville, Tennessee Buffalo Wild Wings would be fucking amazing, dude.
Could all eat chicken wings and drink Jack and Coke and watch the guys get after it.
Dude, beat the shit out of each other.
I mean, all the games would be on. We'd be able to see all the basketball games and football games. I'd order endless boneless wings for everyone. Metallica would open with Slither, and then we would all drink these Jack and Cokes from a can, dude, or Jack and ginger ale is what I'm doing.
Sounds like a fucking dream, man.
That'd be awesome.
Doesn't that sound great?
If you guys get on a plane now, you can be here within 12 hours, and we can get cracking.
Yeah, we
on
can
this.
do it. We can do it. We can get it going. Hetfield and Hammett just need to pull the strings. I'm sure someone will loan Lars a kit.
Yeah, man.
Yeah, we could drum one up here and that. I'll call Aaron Sterling, see what he's got any Thomas shit laying around.
Yeah, Sterling's probably got something, man. He's got such a cool arsenal of drums.
Oh, and all the guys here that I don't know Aaron, but I know a lot of the guys like Aaron in town, and they make all the same jokes that people make about Lars, but ultimately everyone I talk to really respects what he has accomplished as a drummer. I mean, how could you really argue with it?
I'm not here for Lars slander at all. It's like not my thing. And I get it. But as a lot of people know, I have the Death Magnetic signature kit. So just an absolute Lars nut. And have gone back to front on some of the gear bits and pieces, but obviously a huge fan. And on that note of gear, what I'd like to ask you, Clint, as a guitar player, is if you could have one of Hetfield's guitars and one of Hammett's guitars.
Great question.
What would you pick?
I always have loved. It's the one. It's the for Hetfield. It's the one that he calls Uncle Milty, after Milton Berle. It's a 70s Gibson Les Paul Custom that he put the Iron Cross on. In fact, if you look at, I have. This is just a black standard.
And you've got the stripe on it.
And I added the racing stripe because of Hetfield. And he has a big Iron Cross down here. But I basically modeled this guitar after that Uncle Milty because I like it so much. He was playing that a lot during the St. Anger days. He has a ESP made him a copy of it. So now when he plays one, it's not a Gibson. But that's the Hetfield guitar I've really loved. I mean, that classic white Explorer from like 84 and 85 is pretty iconic.
I was going to say, when we were talking about Ride the Lightning, I have the V over Gavin's shoulder. You can see that's like kill him all days. But I've like got this awful obsession to get one of the 80s reissues of the 84 Explorer. And, trick it out with that H3 fucking Tom Anderson pickup in the bridge, and that studio Sweet Silence that they recorded Ride the Lightning at is actually making a masterclass at the minute about how they got the sound.
Oh, cool. Well, there's not a lot about that. I would actually love to see that, because there's not a lot of information about the engineering of that album in particular, other than how they made the bell sound for whom the bell tolls, and that they didn't really know what they were doing and all that shit. But yeah, I would love to know like the engineering, especially the acoustic guitars in Fade to Black. The reason I gravitate towards that Gibson, I'm a big Gibson guy. I never really loved the ESP stuff, but I do like the snake bites a lot. So it's kind of like an older one and a modern one. I really do like those damn snake bites.
They're a fabulous guitar. I had one, believe it or not, when I was 15.
You had a snake bite?
Yeah, the proper, a black one. I'll send you some pictures of it. And I regrettingly sold it to buy a car when I turned 18, and sold it for no money because they weren't really making a ton of money then. And you know the way the guitar market has gone since, but they were a brilliant guitar.
And you had a black ESP, or was it the LTD one?
No, the ESP, the big dog.
Holy shit. Awesome. Yeah, I would probably want to get that over the Vulturous, the V. But I like those new guitars he's making a lot. Like, and anytime he brings out like the camo one and the purple guy that was the baritone, like anytime he brings those out, I get excited. Are you guys Pantera fans?
Oh yeah.
Dude, look at this.
I seen that. Yeah.
I knew I could see the dime bag.
Yeah. Oh fuck.
Oh man.
So the story of me, so people can't see, I have a Dean. Is it a Dean? Oh no, it's just called a dime. Oh, it is a Dean. It's a Dean dime, and it's got the cover of Cowboys from Hell on it. But it's a big pointy dime back guitar. But the way that this guitar happened was Jason Orm, the guy I told you who plays for Alanis Morissette, whose daughter was on the road too. Me and him became really good friends on the road. And I was mostly playing an old 80s Gibson 335 that he fell in love with. So we had a day off somewhere. I don't remember where we were. And he said, dude, I found the same year 335 as yours, and I'm going over there. I want to buy it. If I play it and it sounds good, I'm going to buy it. And I was like, dude, I'm going to get an Uber. I'll meet you over there. So we get over there, and he's looking at this like $5,000, Gibson guitar that he didn't end up buying because he didn't like it. And I'm just sort of looking around while he's talking to the owner, and I see this on the wall. And I thought this was going to be like $1,000. And I said, man, how much is that dime guitar, the Cowboys from Hell guitar? He said, it's $400.
No way.
And I was like, and honestly, when he said it was $400, I was like, I'm going to have to buy this. And Jason said, oh man, you should sell that to him for $300. He like threw 100 off of it. And the owner was like, okay. And I was like, oh my God. So I didn't even ask my wife because that's pretty cheap for a guitar.
Yeah,
license.
man, that's for nothing.
So I texted my wife and I said, hey, I bought a new guitar on the road and I'm sorry. And she wrote back and said, why are you sorry? And I sent her a picture of it.
Oh, that's
Clint Wells is wanted for robbery in the state of.
I tried to play it on the Alanis tour, but it needs to be set up because it's got a locking nut. And it's like it needs some TLC. But yeah, I finally have. I remember when we had less money, when we
like mine, or Dave's, it's like those Fried Rose, the floating tremolos are just a pain in the ass.
They're a pain in the ass. And we had like Joan Jett's guitar techs were like really wanting to like get under the hood and fix it up for me, but I ended up just we have a guitar vault out there. I just threw it in there. So now it's just sitting in my studio.
Oh, it's beautiful.
But, man, that's awesome.
It's pretty fun. But what was I going to say? Oh, yeah. Maybe like 10 years ago when we had no money, I wanted to get like a camo dime guitar. And I found one on Craigslist or something. And I had to, those days was like definitely needed permission. And my wife was like, are you even, at the time I was touring with a country artist named Rodney Atkins. Very, very traditional country. She was like, are you even going to play that on the road? And I was like, I guess not. She was like, do you really think it's a good idea? And she did the whole Socratic thing. Do you think it's a good idea to buy a pointy camo metal guitar that you're not going to play on the road? It's like, okay. So this was me making up for that. Kirk's guitars.
I'll tell you one, Clint, when you come to Ireland next and we go have a beer, I'll talk about all the fumbles that I've had on guitars that are now just out of reach.
Yeah, you getting rid of that snake bite's painful.
Yeah.
We've all got the ones that got away.
I miss some other crackers of just not going through on the deal or, something happening where the money had to go elsewhere or not having the money at the time.
Where are you guys at in Ireland?
So we're in County Monaghan. It's between Dublin and Belfast.
We're like an hour from Dublin.
Okay, only an hour. We've been to both. How far are you from Belfast?
An hour as well.
Yeah, right in the middle.
Oh, wow. Okay. We've done both, and both were really good for us. So I don't know what they're going to have us do next. We should probably do both. I think a lot of people maybe came from either or when we did Belfast 2 years ago, and we did Dublin last year.
Nice.
Oh, we'll definitely meet up, man.
We'll have to get it cracking. So Kirk's guitar.
Man, Kirk's guitars. I'm really partial to that. It's an ESP, but it's a Les Paul shape, and it's got the spider on it.
Oh, the KH3.
That's the Load era. Yeah, my local guitar store when I was a kid used to sell one because I guess they were in production for a while.
That was my first Hammett signature guitar.
You had one of those too?
I had one of them. I must send it on to you. That one was gone, but the guy I sold it to still has it.
My friend Aaron Ginther, who's a friend of the show, when we were in Detroit, I had dinner with him, went to his house, and he had the it's from that time, but it's James's the V with the flames on it.
But he had the JH1.
He had the red flames. I think the green ones are what you see a lot, but he had the red ones.
So the red one was produced. It was the one that they put out like 100 of.
Okay, gotcha. And the green one was just for James?
That was just for James. And then, who did he give it? He gave it to someone whose house got robbed.
He gave it to the guy from Machine Head.
Yeah, his name escapes me. It was a really solid one.
Yeah.
Yeah, he just gave it to that guy. It's pretty wild. Yeah, but this guy's dad bought it, the red one for him. Yeah, limited production. I didn't know there were 100. Man, that's crazy.
Yeah, 1 out of 100.
Bought it for him off the wall in some guitar store in Detroit. And he's just got it cased up in his office. It's so cool.
Nice.
Well, that's one of my fumbles. So there was a guy in like 2012, 2013, when the recession hit worldwide, had a massive guitar collection and he was in college. And he was selling some of these guitars that I don't know where he got his hands on, but he needed some funds for whatever. And he wanted $1,400 for a JH1, the one with the red flames.
Okay.
The last time I checked, they're selling for north of $15,000.
Wow.
I'm like, imagine that for an investment paying off. But COVID has drove the guitar market crazy.
Yeah, because of materials and shit. You know what guitar I love of his that never was in production? You can buy knockoffs, but it's the elk skull, another reload era. That has the barbed wire on the neck, and then it's just this huge like orange elk skull right here.
I
forget the guy's name. It's Dino, isn't it? He done the
Dino. Yeah, he did the pyrography.
Yeah.
Where he burned, it's all burned in. And you can buy like these Chinese knockoffs off eBay that are like $300 where someone just printed like a decal, which is obviously a bummer and blah, blah, blah. But they don't make, like, I've thought about getting one. I mean, if they're only $300 just to see, I don't know.
I've watched some of those videos over the years. You know, you see guys swap out the parts and the electronics, and they're like, "Man, what a good setup! This thing ain't bad for like $700." Yeah, throw a set of EMGs in it with some different wiring, put a Tone Pros on there and some sparesels. Maybe get the frets dressed or get them leveled and get a good setup, and they're supposedly good to go.
Wow.
Talking about the price of cars too. Did you see that auction, Clint? I don't know if you got time to listen to that. The Rory Gallagher. Remember I sent you?
I haven't yet. No.
Yeah, his guitar is up for auction at the minute, and it's going north of $1 million.
Yeah,
it's a Strat. Is it that kind of blue or black Strat?
It's kind of browny, kind of.
Yeah, it was black originally, and then I think it just wore the paint off it.
Yeah, he's a sick guitarist. He's unbelievable.
David Gilmour auctioned off all his shit a few years ago. I don't know if you guys saw that.
A lot of his stuff went crazy expensive, didn't it?
Yeah.
It's crazy. It's fucking nuts.
I'm going to die with all my shit. I'm not leaving any of my stuff.
And the running joke of, I hope my wife doesn't sell it for what I told her I bought it for.
Dude. I remember getting a new guitar once and trying to sneak it in, you know, like I've got a boat behind me with like 10 of them in it. And she said, "What's that one?" And I was like, "What?" And it was a newer one, you know, that I'd snuck in. And she was like, "Would you always have that?" I'm like, "What?" Just keep saying what, you know, what's that? But then eventually going to pour, I'm like, "Hey, listen, it's none of your business. Stay out of it." Which doesn't work. But it is how I felt. Like, look, don't worry about it. Everything's fine.
Yeah. Cool.
She's paying attention.
A great story on that note, funny, Clint. A good friend of mine, his dad is a drummer as well. And he had bought like what he told the wife was a new cymbal and a new snare drum. And he had bought like 4 cymbals and he had them set up on the stand. So his wife's in the kitchen and the drum room is actually in his house, not too far down. And she like pops her head in and asks his dad, does he want tea? And as he's going around the kit, he's like, and this one's new too. And this one, you didn't tell me you got these. And she's like, I thought you only got one.
It's where he should have said, and that's none of your business. Don't worry about it.
Back on the porch and put the earmuffs on.
Well, Clint, it's been an absolute pleasure to have you on, man. We'll have to do it again, and we look forward to you coming to Ireland.
Definitely, man. Really enjoyed the chat.
For sure. Yeah. Well, thanks for having me. I love chatting with you guys, and I hope it turned out good. And definitely look forward to having a pint with you guys when I come back over there.
100%, man. Best of luck in the rest of the tour.
Thank you.
All right, man.
Thanks, man. Chat soon.
All right.
That's all on this week's episode of That Sound podcast. We hope that you enjoyed the episode with Clint as much as we did. It was very insightful for anybody who would like to be a songwriter and is thinking about breaking into that scene. I think there was some brilliant knowledge throughout the podcast on how to go about doing that. If you want to check Clint's social media out, you can find him on Instagram at Clint Wells. If Morgan Wade happens to be playing in a venue near you, I think you should really check her out. It sounds to be an absolute blast, and it seems like the guys are having great time on tour. But that is all for this week. Thank you very much for listening, and we'll chat to you soon.